Recording now. I'm going to bring this up. So where are we here? Is it done? Or is it just black? No, 75%. That's pretty close. Do I wait or do I do a different one? All right, let's just go to a different one. I'll do it. I'll reinstall it later. So I did this one last time. This is the one I use for my ITC 222 class. I have no reason to have Workbench on here, but I'll put it there. There's one other thing I'm going to do, which has nothing to do with you guys really, but I think I'm on wireless. Okay, so we're connected. The internet was down earlier and I went to wireless. It's still connected. Let's disconnect from that. Yeah, well, the connection was good at no internet, but there's it looks like internet's fine now. So this is taking a while to come up. Don't you hate virtual machines? So I was back to here. At home they work really well, and I'm not sure what the difference is. I really don't know. I can run two of them, you know, three at the same time, and it's all great. And I don't have as much RAM as these. I have like 24 gigs. These have 32 gigs of RAM. They should be a lot faster than they are. Come on, go in. If you start updating, I'm going to be very upset. Aha! Why is it doing that? I already did update this. I updated them all. What update is coming through now? So now it's a question of which one gets there first. How many have used MySQL before? Did you use it with PHP admin or with, yeah. So the Workbench is a little bit more like the SQL Server Management Studio. It's not an online interface, and it doesn't require PHP, which is our main. but I mean, the principles are still somewhat the same. Yay, that one's ready. Let's go for that one. How are you doing with people? You're probably similar. All right, so password. All right, so I'm going to maximize this. I'm going to do the magnifier. Although, first thing I'm going to do is go on the web page. So I'm just going to go online. And I think I might have an actual link somewhere in Canvas, but what I'm going to do is just say MySQL Workbench, assuming it will type. There we go. Workbench download. All of this stuff is pretty easy to find if you want. And I'm just going to do not the top one, the next one. MySQL, download MySQL Workbench.
What's the difference between installing?
So I'm going to use the bigger installer. The difference between the installer is whether it downloads it all and then installs, or whether it downloads it from the web through the installer. Does that make sense?
So you have to go back in and add additional.
Well, it's more so. So let's go down here. Boy, that's big. I think I don't need it zoomed yet. Okay. So we want, I'm just going to click on the installer. Did everyone kind of get here? I'm just going to click on this big thing. And it's just going to take us to where we make a choice. And the installer that I want is the, I think the bigger one, the 370. The reason I'm saying that is that when I did the lesser one last time, it failed on about half the machines, and I don't know why. Whereas the bigger one, the second one, didn't fail anywhere. So I'm going to try it. So I'm just going to download it. You do not have to log in or sign up. You can just say, no thanks, start my download. Now, if you want to log in or sign up, they'll send you emails about twice a day for the rest of your life. Just with news about MySQL. Yeah. What? Yeah. So I'm going to run it. It went pretty fast. It's not a big program. I'm going to minimize the web page if it will. My mouse is frozen. There it goes. So the installer should come up. That's the magnify. That may take a minute. Let's give it a moment. Mine is slow loading this stuff because I'm updating it. But you've got it there. Mine should come up here. It's there. I told it to run. I actually don't like this chair much. I can hear it pounding away, so I don't know if it's coming up or not. It's not there. Come on, run. Can I get to... So I think it should, I hit run, it should be running. Let me do a quick thing. Ah, 98%. Why is it black now? Watch it all crash. There it goes, but I still don't have my installer. Everybody else has the installer. But it has. So I just want to, or just do the developer. Did you get to the where you had to set up the password and all? Come on. Where is this?
You said development position, right?
Developer, yeah. So default, and it should bring up some things. No, I don't want the SQL Server.
These extra options going on. We don't need those, do we, for Excel?
So no, so the ones that it tells you you can't do, you don't, just ignore them. Yeah, so you have a list of things that it can't do. What does it say? Oh yeah, that's fine. Just do this. Well, so I wonder if there's more. Might be fun. Yeah, this is good.
Oh, yeah.
If you got just the workbench, you didn't get the other stuff. It might be that you just have the workbench and not the server. Come on, this is annoying me. All right, so I'm done here. I'm going to close this one and do it again and see if that goes a little faster. Can I do this? I don't want to kill this, but I'm going to do VM power. I'm going to suspend the guest. All right, now I'm going to go here because this one is up now, and I'm going to go through the process again. This is one of those days, probably be glad that Thursday's off. I mean, I have to be here, but. Okay. Still slow, and you're there. So you can maybe follow through because I'm going to do it again because it didn't work for me last time. A lot of you are going along there. It's fine. When you do the password, if you're going through there and you get the password for SQL Server, or not SQL Server, MySQL, just do password or something because if you lose your password, you are screwed. So just do some password that you're going to remember. Now, if you're doing this for production or you're putting it on a server where the security matters, then you want to do your root password as something complicated. But for us, we just want something that you won't lose. The other thing, when we do that password, we're going to log in as root. That's something you generally don't want to do, but we're going to do it because it's easier for us. So, once I get through all the hello, all of that, we can do this again. This might take several minutes. I hope not. We've already taken a half hour. That is way too long to be messing with this. Yeah. So I'm wondering if you have this. I have no idea what you So I think you guys, the ones that did it are okay. I think they did the other installer. Just for most of them, just go next. Don't change anything. All right, so I'm going to do this one more time. If you did the other installer, it looks like the server is there. I just don't know what the root password is. It may well be password. So, but I'm going to do the long installer. I'm going to do this again.
Now, if I can set up a new connection, is there a database there?
Yeah, if you can set up a new connection, if you do a plus and say localhost, it pulls up a database. So I think the database is there. Or the server is there, not so much the database. You know what? All of this aside, this has already got MySQL on it. Okay, so you guys are the first one. This video is useless for the first 20 minutes or so. Yeah. Just pass through. Are you up and running now? Good. You might beat me. You might beat me too. Do not do this. Okay, good. This is the correct VM. It was always the correct VM and I started in the wrong one.
Should we be adding SQL users?
No.
No.
I mean, you can if you want, but we're just going to go with root.
Okay, so just the password and then move on.
Yeah.
Are we going to use the shell at all for the rest of the?
We're going to mostly use the.
What do you do about the requirements?
What?
It says check requirements.
Oh, should just run it.
Okay.
So I'm going to again. I'm not intending to use the command line, although you can if you want. So I want MySQL Workbench. And I'm going to go there. So, and then down here, I want MySQL and Workbench. Does this go to the same place? Yes. So I'm going to hit the installer. Most of you are already there. I'm going to do the second installer, which usually works. I think the second installer gives you options, and the first installer does not. First installer just puts it there, right? So you might want it. Now, you do not have to log in. You can just say start my download, and then I'm going to do run. And then I should be up, start to be where you guys are. When we get in, I'll do a quickie tour, and then I'm going to give you time to finish up anything you have from last time, from the SQL Server, the queries and things. And just as much as possible, have those behind us before we move forward. Yay, I have got, I think I'm going to have the installer.
And then you just want a screenshot of that.
Yeah, once you get it up, I'll show you here in a moment. But yeah, just a screenshot of the, maybe with the server there, but it's, I've seen that the server is there. So I wanted to go away with this. Come on, bring up the installer. And yes. Okay, so this is the full installer, which has a few more options. I'm going to say accept the terms. Let me zoom at this point. Generally, this is an easier install than the SQL Server, although SQL Server went smoothly in here. This, actually, I don't know that this install will not go smoothly. It's just that my virtual machines are giving me a problem. Now, you could do custom if you want. What custom would keep us from having to do is this. We don't have Excel or Visual Studio or Python on here. All right. So, but if you had those in your environment at home, you could, it would basically give you the driver, the libraries for Python to talk to MySQL, and it would give you the drivers for Visual Studio to connect to MySQL, and for Excel too, which could be useful. And this is just telling you that those 4 things aren't there, so we're not going to install those. When you get to this, you just say execute, and it goes through. And with luck, it'll just check everything. The other installer seems to just do this and not ask you any questions. This could take a second. It usually doesn't take a long time. So mostly these we don't really need. So we could have gone through and got rid of them, but we do want the workbench. That the shell is a command line. And you can talk to SQL Server, MySQL by the command line, just like you can SQL Server. The one time we will use the command line is when we talk to Mongo. There are some front ends for Mongo too, but I really think you should learn a little bit. Yeah.
For my Mac, should I download the shell from this as well, or just the
So you don't need the command. I think it'll download it anyway, won't it?
It didn't get the shell.
It didn't get the shell.
They're two separate for that.
I didn't know you had to do that separate, but no, we're not going to use it. So I think you could probably connect through the Bash command line.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Just making the terminal.
Yeah. Mine is still slower than your guys's.
You get that little pop-up about restarting your computer, just tell it to do it later.
Well, yeah, although you might need to restart it to make things work. I don't know. You can restart.
So after you install it, it's going to prompt you to restart?
Yeah, a lot of them will say.
I'm talking about that update. You see something that says update, remember that. But it's going to once you restart, fresh MySQL.
So let's look at they're already there.
Then you just got to write your own password and then password. Just make sure you remember it. You are creating the password. Just make it.
So you don't need that. That's what I said. The other thing, I thought it maybe was just Workbench because it didn't ask me any questions. But it's, this part is nice. I don't know if you got the samples, but the sample database is nice. I think that the other install might not have it. Again, it's not for any assignment, but I might use it for some examples of doing like the SQL. So I'm going to do next and next. Now for all of these, as I've already told most of you, you can just ignore, just go with the defaults. It's a development machine. You can do that. Password. My password is literally going to be password. PASSW0RD. And it tells me that my password is weak, which I am well aware of. Now you could add a user, and in real life, if you're setting this up, you'll probably want to add a different couple of users. We're going to log in as root, which is actually not a great idea, but it is the easiest for when you're only going to work with it for a week or so.
Lack of password, stop the connection.
Well, yes, if you don't have a password, will. And if you forget your password, as I said, you're basically screwed. There's some recovery things, but they're really complicated, and I have trouble making them work. What? So I think with yours, you may have a connection with a default password. You're probably okay.
But we haven't been able to. It says we don't have a connection right now.
Oh, you don't.
Yeah, but we. Yeah.
So it says that there's a server, but it says you don't have a connection.
Yeah. Like it should have bought a dial-up for that. We give it the dial-up and then actually.
And it asks you for a password?
No.
No?
No, not that. That's just, it has like this tab that shows connection.
Sure.
It has one listed where we.
And if you click on it, what happens?
This is what happens. It opens the editor, but.
Yeah, that's fine. That means you're in the server. Oh,
Mine says
no connection. So you might not actually have the local host. You might have to add that.
No, the local host here. The default is that. Type it in.
I know, but it still doesn't bring up a connection. There's no connection. So I would do passwords.
just password.
No, I think that means that it didn't install the server. Yeah. So you might download this one and make sure you don't have to necessarily install everything. So I'm going to do next anyway here. And then I'll come around and help with these, but. So I'm just executing these. Because I'm not sure, it looks like you might have Workbench without an actual server. So if you download the bigger one, yeah? You got it to work, or? Let me see real quickly. did you do the big, did you do the one that had all the options? Yes, that would work. I know. Yeah. Did you do it with all the options? All right, well, what we'll do is if we need to install the server, we can do it. Right.
Oh, sorry.
No, you did it, click on that. Yeah, the bottom one works. So if you didn't get the server, if it's not there, you might go back to the install page and undo the bottom one. And then you just don't have to install the workbench again. You can install the other stuff. So I'm going to finish this. And then I'm going to do next. You do not need to set it up as a router or a cluster. So I'm going to finish that. And then I'm going to do next. It's standalone. It wants the password again. And I believe you have to check it. So the connection succeeded. Next. I'm going to execute the configuration changes. Okay, I'm going to finish. And next are all these different configuration things. So we're ready. So I'm going to finish. It gives you the command shell, which we don't care about. Although you could run it, right? MySQL JS. You could write SQL commands there. But Workbench should come up.
There should be connection there.
I don't know. It should just be localhost. Okay, so here it's coming up. So this is, now this one I have, see, notice this came up, did yours come up with that from the beginning? Even the ones that did the other one?
No.
Right, and then it didn't actually do anything though, right?
And the password field says stored.
So it is giving you a, yeah, you could do if you want to store it in bulk.
Yeah, but when we did that, it just doesn't let us connect. It's a test connection. It's showing that we connect.
Right, I'm thinking that you might not have downloaded the actual server.
I think I did though, because it was 480 and it was the bottom of the two.
Oh.
Yeah. And it was one he showed me to download, so I'm pretty sure I got the right one.
All right, let me look here. It should connect, and that should have been there.
Yeah.
So this is what I would take a picture of, and I will talk through this in just a minute. I do not know why that is so wide. That is such a pain. Okay. still behaving as if the server is okay. But I don't know why it said that it would start. Go ahead and do, that install again. Do the second one. So do download that. You go down, just put that. So there's, it says that. Click here. Do the second one. I'm gonna do a quick tour of this in a minute, but I just want to make sure everyone gets that.
I like it. I don't have the management plugins out here.
That's fine, it's if you have, just, you're not connected to the server. Look at the options from the server. So yeah, go to the servers. And, open that and that over. You're pressing. Now you've got so just move the server.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
I just had to connect.
How'd you connect?
Just go to a database, connect to database, control you. Yeah.
I would go back and clear it and stuff. I have no idea. Yeah. Local.
I'll shut it down.
Saying take a snapshot. of that.
Yeah, and I'm gonna take a tour through here once I get all the troubleshooting. Here's the file. You're getting it, this, everything's good, you guys are good. You guys good? You might have to download this. You might be. think that the server may have. You guys are okay? Oh, that's okay. That's okay. You guys are. It's okay. You're okay. Most are okay. We'll get everybody okay before we're done. I think there's only a couple of people that are not. All right, so just a quick tour of Workbench, and this has taken a lot longer than I meant for it to take. But one thing is, if you get to this window, just take a screenshot of that, and that's the install. This shows that the server is connected and the Workbench. Workbench, again, is just a front end, right? The server is running in the back end. And you can have one of the differences between MySQL and SQL Server. SQL Server basically just has that one front end, SQL Server Management Studio. There are lots of front ends you can download for MySQL. PHP Admin is one that's a web-based one. This one is the one that Oracle makes for it. It's still open source, and there are still some issues with it, but it's a pretty good front end. Now, on this one right here, this is your SQL window. You can type whatever SQL you want over here. This is sort of your objects. Your schemas down here are your actual databases. Sequila is a built-in sample database that you may or may not have, depending on how your install went. It's not crucial if it's there or not. We can add it later too. These are things that give you information about the server. You can do a data export, data import. You can shut it down. You can look at logs. You can do different. This is all managing your server. This is for the particular instance, and these are things where you can look at the performance. Most of those we're not going to deal with. The thing that I like about this, I'm just going to real quickly go to File, New Model. The model is where you can design your database just like you could in Visio or in the diagram. The advantage of it is, though, that when you design it here, it isn't real. It doesn't make the database until you tell it to. All right, so I'm going to just like double click MyDB, and I'm just going to call it, for lack of imagination after all of this, I'm going to call it test. All right, so I've named that. Now you can add tables right here, and you can just go do and set properties, but you might notice at the top there's an add diagram. So if I click on that, double click on it, it's going to give me a diagram. And I can do things like I can drag a table. You have to click it and then drag it. Drag a table on there. If I double click it, there's properties down below. So I'm going to call this test table. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we'll spend more time on it when we get building the database. Down here, I'm going to just click, and it gives us right away an ID test table. You don't have to use that, but that is its suggested key field. If you put your mouse over these things, belongs to primary key, that's PK. NN is not null. UK is unique, binary, unsigned. It'll put zeros in. If it's a number, it'll give you a default for 0. So I'm going to do this as PK, and I'm going to give it AI, which is auto increment. So that's and then I click down here to get another column, and I'm just going to say test name. I'm just going to leave that as varchar 45. If you look here, there's a whole bunch of data types. I'm not going to go through them right now. Most of them have equivalents in the Microsoft world that we came from, but they are slightly different. One of the difficulties transferring from one to the other for data is that they name data types differently a little bit. The varchar is the same as invarchar. It's Unicode, right? It's just Unicode by default. You have var binary, and you have different kinds of blobs, and you have some geometric things, and you have, there's a JSON data type, which is kind of neat. Actually, SQL Server 2017 has a JSON data type too. Actually, it's not a data type. It just will turn things into JSON. So I'm going to just leave that as test name. I think that's all I'm going to put in there. I'll make test name not null. Notice that it added those up here. So I'm going to add another table, and I'm going to show you how to do relations. So again, if I double click this, I go down and do the properties. I'm going to call it test, I don't know, instance, test detail. I'll let it be the ID there, just make it a primary key, auto increment. I'll put date. And I'll change this to date. Is there anything else I want to do in there? I'm going to just say test score, although that doesn't necessarily make sense, but we'll do it so I can do another. And I'm going to make it a decimal, and it's kind of, when it has the parentheses like that, well, actually, let's make it 5 too. Depends on how you're scoring them. Okay. So, and again, if I click up here, so it isn't real happy, I can drag this out. Oh, I'm going to do, I didn't put in the foreign key because I'm going to add that. As I said, this is just a quickie tour. We'll do a better tour as we get into the assignment. So this, I'm going to kill this for a moment. Notice that there are these relationship things. One of the things I want to say is you really, really want to use the dashed ones. And there's a reason for that, which I'll explain in a moment. First, I'll do the dashed one. And I'm going to go to test detail and then click up here. Notice it adds and then let me bring down. It adds a test table, ID test table int. It creates its own foreign key. If you want to, you can add your own foreign key. You can do this in the properties down below. But if you use that dragger, that tool, it creates a foreign key, which is named somewhat differently than the primary key. There is no rule that the primary key and the foreign key have to be named the same. They do have to have the same int, same data type. And the other thing that'll drive you crazy, at least initially, is that in SQL Server, you always drag from the primary key to the foreign key. In this one, you click on the foreign key table and then drag to the primary key. So it's backwards from the way we did it before. The little red triangle there is the sign of a foreign key. A blue triangle just means that it's required. Did I not make the date required? I may not have. So I'm going to kill this, and I'm going to show you what happens if you do the solid one. And then we'll do it again, the regular one. So I am going to use the solid one. And I'm going to click here and then here. Now notice it's not a red triangle, but it's a key. It makes it a part of the primary key. This is called an identifying relationship. An identifying relationship means that the foreign key is part of the primary key of the foreign key table. The only time that usually I ever do that is when it's a linking table, right? So when you have a linking table, you have the primary key from the two tables you're linking, and I usually combine them into a composite key together. This has just created a composite key of test table and test detail. I wouldn't do that. Generally, you don't want to do that. So I'm going to delete this. This is a really subtle thing that I mostly ignore, the difference between an identifying and non-identifying relationship. But MySQL actually implements it. So just know that most of the time you want the dashed one. So if I did another table, I have no idea what this table would be. Let's do, let's call this one student. And what we'll do is we will do a linking table. So we got student, and I'm going to give it this as a key. And I'm just going to put their name. Varchar is fine. You can make them up to 255, just like the other one. And I'm going to do student email. And that's all I'm going to do here. Whoa. All right. So let me find where I was. So I'm going to assume that there's a linking table between student and test detail. Just be aware this doesn't make any sense. I'm just trying to show relationships. So I'm going to call this one student link table or something. And then I'm just going to drag it so there's a little bit of white here. And I will use the solid ones to make this. So I'm going to click here and then here. And then I'm going to get another solid one and click here to there. Did that go the right way? Why isn't it? I don't see it. That doesn't make sense. Why did it not go?
I think you did it backwards.
Did I?
Yeah, did you mean to click on the student table first?
No. Oh, I did because it's a foreign key. You're right. I always do that backwards. It's so I do want to do here and then here. There it goes. So you can create relationships. The solid lines make them both part of the primary key. The dashed lines make them just a normal foreign key. So as I said, 90% of the time you want the dashed lines.
So would you always use that for linking tables?
You don't have to. With a linking table, I like to make a composite key like this with the foreign key. Because notice these are red, whereas the other one are yellow. That means that they're both primary and foreign key. You could have a student link table ID and just leave these as foreign keys if you want. All right, this is the neat part, but don't, when you actually start working on stuff, don't do this until you're done. You can go to database, forward engineer, And I'm just going to do, I don't think I need to type localhost local instance. Whoa. So I'm going to do next. I'm pretty much going to ignore all the options. I do have to do my password.
How did you get that, Steve? Where you going?
All right, so let me cancel. So I went to database forward engineer. I am going to do next and next. Then it comes up with a password. And then OK. And then next. Gives me the SQL for all the tables that I just created, which you could copy and paste. Notice it has saved a file, copy to clipboard and back. So if you just want the SQL, you can do this. I'm going to do next. So it says it forward engineered it successfully. So I'm going to do close. I'm going to go back to local instance of my SQL router, or you could go home. And I'm going to refresh my schema, and notice that there's test there. It actually created the database from the diagram, but it didn't do it until I told it to. That's the part. It doesn't do it until you forward engineer. Now, a couple of things. When you do the forward engineer, if you go back and make changes to the model and forward engineer again, the chances are you'll have a mess because it doesn't overwrite what you did, it blends it. You could end up with two copies of the same table if you made a change to a table, rather than one replacing the other. So in general, I say try to fix it all in the model before you ever forward engineer. If you're going to forward engineer, I would suggest deleting it here before you forward engineer again, although you'll lose data if you put data. One last thing I'll show, and then, yeah.
On the Lincoln diagram, I still had the 3 keys. I had the 1 yellow and the 2 orange.
So if you, going back to the model, in the diagram, if you use the solid line, then you'll get the 2 keys, the orange keys.
Oh, is it just because it's?
They're part of the primary.
Oh, okay. So it's just.
I didn't put anything in it. You put a key in. Right?
Oh, okay.
Which is actually okay. It wouldn't make much difference. I left this. This was totally empty when I put it up here, and I didn't go down to the properties and add anything to it.
Okay. All right. Got it.
So when I click on a table, let's do student. Can I move this up a little? Okay. So there's the student table. There's 3 little icons that go with it. I don't know if you can see it. The first one is information, just tells you about the table. The second one, the wrench, allows you to modify the table. This one doesn't go back to you're modifying it in the server. You're not modifying it in the model. Does that make sense? And the third one is a little form. And this form will look a lot like SQL Server, so I'm going to do this. It gives you a little, thing to enter data. And I could do, let's just do John Smith and John Smith at I'm just going to do like 2 rows. So then let's go down to Jane Doe and Jane at Gmail. All right, so the thing about this is, unlike SQL Server, this one doesn't save your data until you click the apply button. And when you click the apply, notice it creates two insert statements, which, if I drag this up, you know, you can apply these. So I'm going to apply those. It says it was successful. If you have any errors in your data, this is where the errors would pop up. And then I'm just going to finish. Now they are written. The thing that's a little scary about this, and I kind of wish it was like SQL Server and just wrote it row by row, is that I have had students in the past who filled every table with data and forgot to click the apply. And so the next time they came back, it was all gone. You know, so you have to, for every change and for every table, click apply to get the data in there. You might notice that when it brings up a command when you do that, because basically it's just selecting from the table. It has a semicolon, unlike SQL Server. You do need the semicolon here. I think that's enough just for an overview. It's actually pretty easy to use. There are a couple of bugs. Oh, also notice that the auto numbers came in once I applied it. All right. The model is pretty neat. I mean, because you can mess with it, and you can do all sorts of things with it before you. Yeah, there's also, if you have a database, or if you want to go from your database and make a reverse, there's reverse engineer that takes an existing database and turns it into a model. And then you can mess with the model with that. I wish Visio used to have these, reverse and forward engineer, and they took it out. It would be nice if it still had them. But Visio used to do it for SQL Server. They took it out because they were trying to work on universally compatible XML file formats. You know, all documents, basically open source documents, Word, the Office documents, Google Docs, they all have an XML file format that was agreed on. It's universal, which is why you can open up a Word document in Google, and you can open up a Google Doc in Word. They're all intercompatible because of this XML file format. And they were making Visio conform to that. So, but when they did it, they took away the ability to forward engineer and reverse engineer. Questions on this? You guys okay? So I took longer than I wanted because it took forever for me to get set up to install. If you have things to finish from the SQL Server, you're welcome to work on it. We've got, what, about 45 minutes? If you don't, you can play with this or you can leave early. It's up to you.
Should we save this?
It should be, I mean, the test one.
Oh, no, just like when you close MySQL, is it like on the server, is it just good?
Yeah, it should be fine. Like this model probably won't be here unless I save it.
Okay.
Well, nice thing about these models, so let me save the model. I generally wouldn't. It's on the server, so the actual database is on the server. That's not going to go away. The model is a file. So if I name it test, the file, the neat thing about this is the file is movable. You could take this file home and load it into MySQL at home, and then you could forward engineer and have the database there. So the file, the model here, unlike in SQL Server also, is separable. It's a file that can be moved and carried around.
Is this available on Linux as well?
Yes. MySQL will run on Linux. It'll run on a Mac. It'll run on anything. Yeah. I don't know. I think there's a workbench for yeah, I'm sure there's workbench for Linux. What?
Probably that's less good.
I don't know. It originally was. MySQL typically runs on Linux, actually. But when you're doing a server, when you're actually using it as a server, it's more typical to use the command line to talk to it because it's less resource
Where do we
intensive.
save this?
Yeah, that makes sense.
What?
Where do you save this to?
Wherever you want. I mean, I was just saving this model file. And the database itself, if you fast and forward engineered it, is there. It's not going away. The data that you put in, if you apply it, the data isn't going to go away. The models will go away if you don't save them. All right, so thanks for putting up with all of the updates and chaos there. Took like a half hour to get going. There is a video which I will stop here in a moment, but it has a long dead spot at the beginning. I am going to this weekend try to download some kind of software to edit YouTube. I'm not going to do any sophisticated editing. I just want to go through and kill some of the dead spots, just pull them out.
See you next week.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a whole week before. I just didn't want to start us on the assignment until after the long.
Yeah. That's okay.